We are now going to be in conversation with Ian Cameron, who is the portfolio chairperson for the Committee on Policing in Parliament. Ian, a very good morning to you. Thank you so much for making time for us this morning. Please speak to us about when you saw the visuals coming out of White River on Pebbles Farm on Friday. What went through your mind, and also considering the information that has now come out over the weekend?
Good morning. Thank you very much. Yeah, obviously it's worrying. It's very concerning to see. We've welcomed the fact that the police and the relevant authorities acted eventually, but obviously there's a huge question mark regarding state security and what their real capacity is. What have they done? I think there are a lot of unanswered questions. We need to try and understand what the loopholes were that they've gotten into. We've already made contact with the head of CIRA, the security regulator, to try and also see what the possibilities, or rather the loopholes were that they may have slipped through there.
Yeah. So does this mean that the portfolio committee would be calling on the SAPS management as well to come and explain what happened in this particular case?
Absolutely. Obviously, it will take. We'll spend some time first to ask a few questions in writing to different authorities. But yes, absolutely. In fact, CIRA actually reached out to us first, so we'll be communicating throughout the day and obviously tomorrow, and then we'll see if we can get to the bottom of it. I think my biggest problem. I think in terms of private security training, there's quite a bit of training in South Africa that is of a very specialized nature due to the role that the private security industry plays. And so I'm not necessarily that concerned about CIRA's role as much as I am about the SSA role. I think it's extremely worrying that if this really was a military training base, specific military training being done for specific military purposes, then I think that is where we would not necessarily just ask one department to answer, but possibly even several, and get everyone into a room and then ask the questions that are difficult to ask.
Yeah, and that's the issue, right, is who's supposed to bear the responsibility? We know after the 2021 July unrest, the decision was taken to take intelligence back into the presidency. It is now within the presidency. Should there be answers that come out of the presidency and from the portfolio committee side, considering that you have intelligence that is within the presidency, how then do you guys get the answers that you're asking or the questions of?
Yeah, so obviously the questions I would be asking from a portfolio committee side, along with my committee, would be with regards to crime intelligence specifically and police capability and that of CIRA as well, because that falls under my focus area or scope. I believe this is a matter that would need to be referred to the Intelligence Committee specifically, and then there would be questions that need to be asked there. But certainly, you would have to send and ask questions to the presidency to understand how SSA and what role the State Security Agency played in order to prevent this. How did they miss this? Because you see, it's one thing to say one made a mistake, but with something like this, if it gets to this point, you've already failed. So it's not a matter of making a mistake or not. You have already failed. The fact that 95 people were potentially getting some kind of specialized military training, and by the looks of it, that seems to be what it is. Is extremely worrying, because is this the only one? Are there several more? Who played a role in getting them there? How they've been getting away with it for so long? So the long story short is, I think the State Security Agency would need to answer to the Intelligence Committee. But from our side, we'll be asking questions regarding crime intelligence on a local level, as well as provincial, and then obviously the CIRA side of things to determine what went wrong there.
Yeah. Is there any legislation, Ian, that you know of in the country that bars private security companies from giving military-style training? Because if you look at the website of Militas, the academy, they speak about offering military-style training. Yesterday, the Sunday Times, quoting the spokesperson for CIRA, I just quickly want to read what he's quoted as saying in that article. He says that according to the information at their disposal, CIRA can confirm that Militas, the academy, was registered in 2017, had been accredited since January 2019. The academy had submitted course reports for grades E, D, and C of security training, the last reports being submitted in 2021. And then it goes on to say that these grades entail basic security, health and security, access control, and proper patrolling. They do not include senior security officer training, which includes firearm competency. This is done in the more senior grade B course.
Well, the firearm competency side is they are separate unit standards. I myself have done all the CIRA grades. I've also done firearm training both for personal and business purposes. So they're different unit standards, but the point being the fact that the A and B grades weren't there raises even more eyebrows, because as you correctly said, if it were the latter three that you mentioned, then it means that it is not of a serious nature, the private security training. And none of that CIRA training, whether it's from grade E to the grade A to the last, is necessarily very complex. But that being said, it does create a certain benchmark for seniority of training or the seriousness of training. I'm not too worried about the firearm competency. As I said, it's a different unit standard. What would be worrying about the firearm competency side is how would they be doing that firearm competency if that is a specific unit standard that were to be offered there as Libyan nationals. So how did that work? Because that already is a major red light to me, and I would be very concerned if we were providing that type of training and accreditation to someone from the outside, because that simply doesn't fit into the existing legislation. Regarding CIRA and regulations regarding military training, obviously there are regulations regarding paramilitary training, and it's important that that is in place. Majority of countries in the world, democratic countries, have that in place. That being said, though, is that the private sector in South Africa plays a very important and a crucial role in preventing and combating very violent and serious crime in South Africa. So if you look at something like the cash in transit business, it is something that plays a very important role in trying to curb that issue. And so the training, if you were going to look at specialized training, it would all have some kind of a policing or a military kind of effect on it. I think the point is to rather go and consider what is used for. Does it fit into existing legislation? And by the looks of things for now regarding this specific issue, it does not seem to fit into legislation. But again, there are too many unanswered questions at the moment.
Too many unanswered questions indeed. Thank you so much for your time. Ian Cameron, he's the chairperson of the Portfolio Committee on Policing in Parliament.